Well, good afternoon, everyone, and a big welcome to all of the teachers who've joined us here today. My name is Kim, and I'll be your host for this 1 hour of professional development brought to you by the Australian Football League. We are really excited to be hosting this session and to introduce you to a suite of new resources for primary school teachers on teaching the fundamentals of AFL. This webinar is specifically targeted at exploring two of the many fundamental movement skills crucial to the game of AFL. Today we'll be looking at picking up the ball and marking. I would like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from which we are recording today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to the elders, past, present and emerging. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that you are tuning in from, and further extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people attending today's webinar. Let's begin with a few introductions. We're very fortunate to have an AFL great with us here today. I would like to introduce you to Steph Chiocci. Steph plays the position of midfielder and is the current captain of Collingwood's AFLW team, who are doing very well just at the moment. Steph's been the captain for 6 seasons, and Steph, it's great to have you with us. We also have Sam McKenzie joining us today. Sam is the coaching, content and learning lead at the AFL. Rebecca Marshall is also online with us, and Rebecca is the AFL National Schools Manager. So a big welcome to Steph, Sam and Rebecca. Thank you for taking the time to join us here today and to share your AFL wisdom with all the teachers attending. A little bit of housekeeping before we get going. Throughout the session, we'd love to hear your questions. So feel free to pop those into the chat box. They don't go to everyone, just our hosts and panellists see those today. And then towards the end of the session, we'll have a dedicated question and answers time where our AFL ambassador and representative will be able to address any AFL specific questions that you might have. Okay, let's get into things. A quick overview of what will be covered in the next hour. We will review the learning objective, and Rebecca will discuss the rationale behind the national program. We will discuss the pedagogical approaches that we've used and then move into the heart of the webinar, which is all about teaching the fundamentals. And that's where you'll hear from our AFL experts, Steph and Sam. Following that, we'll have our time of Q&A, and we'll finish by discussing the supplementary leadership and healthy eating and nutrition resources that have been developed to work alongside the main AFL teaching and learning frameworks. And like any good lesson, we have some objectives for the session on the screen here. So number 1, to understand a range of strategies used to encourage play and support diverse learning styles within the health PE classroom, to develop an understanding of fundamental AFL skills and to know how to facilitate these with students in Foundation to Year 2, but that could also encompass any students who need to learn these fundamental skills. And of course, to learn from experts in the field through the sharing of best practice. And don't forget to add this hour to the maintenance of your professional development. To make life easier, we've linked this session to 2 outcomes of the professional standards for you. You might want to quickly jot those down. So over to Rebecca now, who'll speak to the rationale behind the national program that has been developed for teachers. Rebecca, welcome to today's webinar. Great to see you.
Thanks, Kim, and welcome to everyone else. Thanks for joining us. To start off with, I think on the slide there we suggest what is AFL. And so we do know that teachers and students will have a varying knowledge of our game. So I would encourage post this session, and particularly if you are to implement a lesson with your class, that we do have a resource that advises the rules and mechanics of our game on our new play.afl/schools website. And there's also a pretty cool video that you can show your class as well. Now, why the rationale for an AFL program for schools? Just over 18 months ago, we actually worked with Kimberlin Education closely to chat with teachers to better understand on how teachers wanted to engage with sport in their school and also engage more broadly with the AFL. And through that process, there were three key things that teachers told us. And they were that you required really high quality curriculum-based resources, that if you were to engage with us, that you needed to be able to engage and find information really easily or navigate information from us. And thirdly, that you really valued professional learning, hence why we are here today. So the approach that we pulled together and are really pleased to have launched late last month is an AFL Skills strategy and approach where that is underpinned by our new website. I know many of you would have been on there already just to register for this session, but play.afl/schools now includes all of the resources that we have available, which integrate both practical and in-classroom lesson plans and all incorporate effective evidence-based pedagogy and also student assessment tools and criteria as well. And then finally, with our professional learning approach, obviously this is one way which you can engage with us to feel confident and have the tools to implement our lesson plans. But along with our webinars, we actually will be in conferences across the country teaching, and you'll hear from us in a very similar format to today's session in person if you do register for any upcoming teacher conferences, such as ones run by ACHPA. And we also have a new self-paced learning management online tool, which will be launched in term 1, which you can use. And we know teachers are very busy, so you can integrate your own learning and having the tools to implement these lessons via that new online platform, which we will launch in term 1. We think overall that our game is effective and engaging and educational, and we do know that students if they are being engaged in a really enjoyable lesson, don't always realise that they're learning. So we're really confident that our resources that we have available to you can support students in their learning and also bring being physically active and supporting that through students across the country, whilst also supporting you as teachers. So we do hope our professional learning suite and resources effectively help you to integrate AFL into your classrooms and PE lessons. Thanks, Kim. Back to you.
Thanks, Beck. Great to hear all that background and an exciting program. So when we were developing the resources for teachers, a few approaches were taken into consideration. And we just want to take some time before we look at the fundamental skills to just discuss these a little bit. So we'll look at how to differentiate lessons using the change it up approach that some of you may be familiar, but it's worth going back and having another look at. Then we'll look at the free play and guided discovery continuum. And finally, a quick look at the resources and how they're structured. So we know as teachers that classrooms are full of diverse learners. So Change It is an easy acronym for teachers to remember when considering how to modify games, skill building and activities in the PE classroom. It's worth pointing out here early that there's no expectation to modify all of these aspects when you are teaching a new skill or implementing a game. As teachers, you know your students best. So we encourage you to think about what will be in the best interests for your individual students' needs. So let's have a quick look at the Change It acronym. C is for coaching style. Consider your own teaching style. Vary questions and language and ways of communicating with your students. We can vary how to score or win the game. Be inventive with different ways students can score or win. For A is area. Change the size or shape of your playing area. N is for numbers. We can adapt team size and positions to be more inclusive or to differentiate. Game rules. You can get creative with game rules. Encourage your students to help develop these. And that fits with the curriculum where students need to design their own games and rules. But best of all, it can be a lot of fun. Alternate and vary the equipment that's used and give options. For I, inclusion, modify to include all learners and abilities. Give options and ask the students for their input too. And of course, time. We as teachers always read the room, and that's also the case in PE. Increase or decrease the time for games, activities, drills, and reflections. Use your knowledge, wisdom, experience to make choices about which of those things you vary. The second part of pedagogy that we'd like to have a little bit of a look at is exploration, free play, or guided discovery. And particularly in the stage 1 primary program, we include 5 to 10 minutes of this sort of exploration and free play in each lesson. As you can see in the diagram, play-based learning is a continuum, with the focus shifting between the student and the teacher leading the learning. The role of the teacher is to move between these different modes depending on the intended learning outcome. So exploration, free play and guided discovery provide students with an opportunity to explore and develop their skills in a less structured environment, while also supporting their social, emotional, physical and cognitive development. So what's the difference between these terms? Some of them are reasonably straightforward, but I think it's really important to look at the role of the teacher in each one. So in free play or exploration, the activity is free from set or imposed rules or guidelines. Here the children have complete autonomy. Teachers and adults are just observers. Free play is a great way for students to explore new concepts, such as how a football moves when it's bounced, a tricky one for young learners. And the observations made during free play can be used to guide and shape lessons. Some other examples of play include just playing with the different sports equipment, creating and initiating games, solving puzzles, physical play, chasing, and outdoor play of all kinds. So that's down on our student-led end. In the middle, we have guided discovery. And this is teacher-assisted and is more of a collaboration between teachers and students. Guided discovery is scaffolded in a way that has clear learning intentions, but still encourages students to freely explore, wonder, and problem solve within the context of new and unfamiliar ideas. Here, teachers work alongside the students to initiate or create games or play together. And during this type of play, teachers should aim to provide feedback or give demonstrations and comment on new discoveries. So we might hear phrases like, maybe you could try this. Can anyone suggest a way we could do this differently? Wow, what did you just discover? Guided discovery gives focus while still allowing students the freedom to explore. And of course, games. Games bring in more structured learning and are managed or observed by a teacher. Games have clear rules and boundaries, but still promote a sense of fun and playfulness. It's always important to keep that in mind. And then finally, it's worth just adding this to the end of the continuum, a little bit beyond that play zone, is structured learning. This is facilitated by the teacher with a clear learning intention. And in the context of the primary program, structured learning is used to build the specific AFL skills. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of context about where play and structure fit into our approach. And the last thing before we move into our fundamental skills is just to have a look at what the components are in the primary program. So for teachers, we have an overview, a guide with preamble that includes the pedagogical approaches we've taken. There are lesson summaries complete with coaching tips and ways to adapt for diverse learners. Various opportunities for formative assessment have also been embedded into the sequence of learning. And of course, all lessons are curriculum aligned to the national curriculum, but also to New South Wales and Victorian outcomes. And for those teachers who are keen to do some summative assessment, there are ready-to-use rubrics, again aligned to each curriculum. And for the students, there are worksheets for pre and post self-assessment. Every lesson includes student success criteria, lots of wonderful videos, and we'll see some of those in just a moment, for both games and skill building. And these double as instructions for teachers who'd like to see the games and skills in action. And there are plenty of opportunities for self-reflection. So now we move into the exciting part of the session, teaching fundamentals. This is a great opportunity for you to see the videos that are accessible within the program. And we're going to start by showing you the video for picking up. I know that sounds interesting, but it's a fundamental skill of the AFL sport. So let's have a look at this fantastic little video.
Welcome to NAB AFL Auskick. Here are some tips on
picking up the ball.
We're going to learn the best way to pick up a stationary and a moving ball. To pick up a stationary ball, there are 3 steps. Get sideways, get low, and do a 2-handed crocodile pickup. Approach the ball with a low sideways stance, putting 1 foot in front of the ball so you are standing over the top of it. Bend your knees and get nice and low. Pick up the ball with 2 hands like a crocodile snapping their mouth. Your fingers should almost be touching the ground. Get your nails dirty. And that's how you pick up a stationary ball. Now, let's learn how to pick up a moving ball. To pick up a moving ball, there are also 3 steps. Get in line with the ball, get low, and do a 2-handed scoop. Get your body behind the line of the ball and have your hands together with your fingers straight to the ground. As you move towards the ball, bend your knees and get nice and low. Scoop the ball up off the ground with both hands like a shovel digging dirt. Again, get those nails dirty. Your fingers should almost be touching the ground. Once you've scooped the ball, turn your fingers up so the ball rolls into your hands. And that's how you pick up a moving ball.
So good. As you can see, they're fabulous resources and really worth making sure you check them out. So now we're going to pass over to you, Steph, to give us a bit more detail about how to pick up the ball.
Thanks, Kim, and thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. So as you can see there, that resource goes through the skill in its entirety. In our experience as teachers, and you would know, it's really important to break down the skill. Students can often be really overwhelmed if you're showing them it all at once and expecting them to do each step in the first go. So my tips with this sort of activity, especially given that we're targeting the younger years here, is to really break it down. It doesn't necessarily need to be always about football. So when it comes to picking the ball up off the ground, we know that technique is really, really important. So I would start with something as simple as Simon Says. I would demonstrate how to actually pick the ball up, but I would do it in a fun little game way. So Simon Says, put your foot over your ball, and they can do those sorts of things. So then at least you're breaking it down without them really realising it. Obviously, picking up a ball is a fundamental skill of our game. It is difficult. So you'll see when the kids are actually moving towards the ball, a lot of the time they will put their feet, they won't be side on, okay, and they'll be too front on, and that's when they'll often miss the ball, or the ball will roll past them, and that can be really frustrating for them. So to eliminate that, we talk about fast feet and then treading water. And if you talk to the kids as if they're running really fast, but you need them to slow down and tread water, and you want to see 3 little steps, that often does help with them before they bend over to pick the ball up. But with any fundamental skill, breaking it down so it's applicable to them is important. You can start without a ball. You can do that with the Simon Says game. You can definitely start without a ball and just get that technique right. I often, I remember doing placement with the juniors, and I asked them to grab their favourite pencil. As simple as that. I know it sounds weird, but I remember putting their pencil on the ground and saying, right, you're going to pick up your pencil. And they think it's really silly, but if you're actually getting them to do the right action and the right movement, that goes a long way to when you introduce the ball. So yeah, there's just some little tips with that sort of thing. I know they're quite basic, but yeah, kids just want to have fun. So the sooner you can get it to a footy, the better. But yeah, you can't neglect the basics to start with.
So you mentioned there that you use a pencil before progressing to the football. Do you recommend that teachers move straight to an AFL football, or is there a space for having a round ball in there as a stepping stone?
Yeah, absolutely. So the pencil one was just a silly example of, getting kids to get their fingers across the ground. So fingers to grass, we say, but then you've got the literal students who'll say, but we're on a court. So okay, so fingers to ground, get your fingernails dirty. You can start with no ball. You can start with a cone if need be. That's really important. You can either have the bigger cones or the smaller cones, and then progressing to a bigger ball, soccer balls, basketballs, netballs, whatever it is. Ball handling is really important. There's so many drills you can do with ball handling, but any type of equipment in their hands before they progress to a football. We can even use a balloon if you can be bothered blowing them up prior to, but we know that repetition is the mother of skills. So anything that gets them, if they're doing things over and over again, that will hold them in good stead for when you introduce the footy.
Repetition is the mother of skill. That's a great phrase. It must be a lot of your day.
Yes.
What are some of the look fors then, Steph, in, where do kids sometimes go wrong with this? What are you looking for when you're coaching, and how can we help correct them?
No worries. You just cut out then, but I'm assuming you asked what are some of the common errors and mistakes.
Yes.
Yeah, no worries. A lot of the time, the students will just run in, bullet a gate, and not take those sort of steps prior to. So just really making sure that they are coming in at a good pace. And if they're not side on, I think that's crucial. It's really important that we pick the ball up when we're side on and we get that front foot in line with the footy. A lot of the time I find students sort of run in and they're not turning their body. So getting them to turn, and that's where those freeze activities, like Simon says, or even just doing a little warm-up activity where they're moving and then you say, okay, freeze in the position and get them to actually stand there like a statue. That's really important because that reinforces that movement. So I think one of the common errors with this is obviously overrunning the ball, and often it's because you're going too fast. Not being side on with your body, which obviously center of gravity shifts, and you're unbalanced and then can't pick up the ball. So they're probably the two main errors.
Yeah, and the getting side on feels a bit like a safety technique as well, a bit of a self-preservation. Is there anything else from a safety perspective that you'd be watching out for?
Oh, it's definitely a safety precaution, especially when, you could be tackled. For the latter years, obviously, we'd then teach the students to pick the ball up, drive their legs, or, handball on the up. But the fact that they are side on, obviously they're wanting to protect the ball, but also their head, which is really important. So keep your eye on the ball at all times. Side on, once you pick the ball up, retain the footy. And I suppose when they're playing, when they're a little bit older, you're expecting contact. So we want to make sure that their head's out the way.
Yeah. Steph, I could sit and chat here all day with you and ask you a million questions, but we're going to move on to our next fundamental skill, and then afterwards we might come back and have some general questions. So people who are on the call, if you would like to leave any questions for Steph or for Sam, who's about to speak with us, feel free just to pop them in the chat and we'll come back to those at the end. Steph will need to race off to training shortly, but hopefully we'll be able to get back to her before she has to run.
No,
so that's picking up the ball. Thanks so much, Steph, for those insights. Lots of absolute nuggets of gold there, and I hope people have jotted them down or embedded them in their brain to come back to. But let's jump now on to our second skill, which is all about marking or catching the ball. Let's have a quick look.
Welcome to NAB AFL Auskick. Here are some tips on
Marking!
There are two main ways to catch or mark a football. On your chest, called a chest mark, or in your hands, called an overhead mark.
For chest marking, there are 4 steps. Arms out, palms up, watch the ball, hug the teddy.
Keeping your elbows close together, stretch your arms out straight in front of you to make a number 11. Keep your palms flat, facing the sky. Keep your eyes on the ball the whole time. Watch it all the way into your arms. Catch the ball in your arms and keeping your elbows close together, bring it into your chest. Hug the ball tight, like you're hugging a teddy bear. Don't drop the teddy. So remember, the 4 steps are arms out, palms up, watch the ball, and hug the teddy. And that's how you do a chest mark. Now, let's learn how to do an overhead mark.
For overhead marking, make a W, watch the ball, long arms, and close the W.
Pointing your fingers to the sky, make a W shape with your hands in front of your face and spread your fingers. You're ready to mark the ball. Keep your eyes on the ball the whole time. Watch it all the way into your hands. Try to catch the ball at the highest point by extending your arms high into the sky with your elbows slightly bent. As soon as you see and feel the ball land in your hands, close the W by wrapping your hands around the ball. So the 4 steps are make a W, watch the ball, long arms, and close the W. And that's how you do an overhead mark.
Another great one. Sam, we're going to pass over to you for some more tips, advice, or wisdom on how we can introduce marking to our students.
Yeah, thanks for that. Those videos are great just in terms of nailing down those sort of key points for you to focus on when you're coaching them. So I sort of thought I'd start with a little bit of, and this, I know we're talking about the little leagues, but actually, like, when we're trying to teach skills, or like, we've got to sort of understand our own goal for that as well. And sort of long term, when we talk about expert skill, actually it's the ability to do it in lots of different situations. So no matter what's happening, if you can mark the ball, then that means you're an expert in it. And I know it's sort of, when we're dealing with really young kids, it sounds a bit ridiculous to talk about it like that, but it does shape then how we try and coach as well. Because we sort of think about, when the AFL, when we do a lot of our junior coaching curriculums and things like that, we sort of think about skill as technique and adaptability, and they're both really important. Sometimes we get too caught up in our technique stuff and we forget about the adaptability. So we need to make sure that there's both, which means that, and I love Steph's, chatting about the repetition. Repetition, you need to do things a lot. There's a saying in skill acquisition that repetition without repetition. And so you need lots and lots of reps to get better at these things, but each rep needs to be maybe a little bit different, because that helps to teach us the adaptability and allows, so it's not exactly the same thing over and over again. The ball might move differently. And so the ability to be able to change what you're doing, that's really important. And when you're dealing with young kids, that variability might be really small changes anyway. They might look pretty similar, but it's just giving the kids the opportunity to explore and see when things change, how they might change the way they complete the skill. So for marking, I think one of the key things that we sort of look at is, if you don't know where the ball's going to be, it's very hard to mark it. And so the ability to watch the ball and understand and anticipate where it's going to be, which is where you need your hands or your arms to be, is actually a really important skill. And you can kind of progress that from being standing still and someone throwing the ball to you where it's just going to land in your arms, which is a really easy way to learn it, to then being further away or the person's moving and all that sort of stuff allows us to kind of increase the challenge as we go along. So you kind of need to find the challenge point for your kids. And within a group, quite often the challenge point for some kids might be absolutely gun. They might be really good at catching. They've been doing heaps of it since they were little, and others may not have had it at all. So the ability to find the challenge point for the kids is actually really important. Probably the second thing, so watching the ball is really important for, figuring out ways that they can do that. You might, balloons are a really cool one that Steph was talking about before, because balloons float and move so much in the air that kids actually have to move with them to try and get it, but they move really slowly, which allows them to kind of figure out where they need to be, where their arms need to be to then try and catch the ball. You can use ribbons or handkerchiefs or other different bits of equipment. We talk about the change it approach, the E. That sort of stuff, the ribbons or handkerchiefs or anything float in the air. So kids need to be able to figure out to then try and to get their hands to it. because the second part is getting your hands. You watch the ball, anticipate, then get your hands to where the ball is. And the tips in the video are really good around what you should be doing with your hands. So if you're trying to catch it up here with your W or your arms out. But what we want to do is we want to give kids the opportunity to explore and try different ways of catching it, find out what works for them as well. One of my favorite activities that I've ever run with Little League when I used to coach the little ones, we used to do a sort of a creative marking activity where they would pair up and they had to come up in their pair with a really creative way to mark the ball. So they could mark it in their t-shirt, or they could mark it behind their back, or they had to come up with lots of really fun ways to do it, and it allowed them to explore different ways of marking the ball and helping to create that sort of well-rounded skill. Some of them were catching it in their legs. I think the best one I ever saw was a handstand into a cartwheel into a mark. So someone who had a gymnastics background. But it's really fun to see the young ones try and figure out different ways that they can do it or catch it between their elbows, because it all teaches the same thing of watching the ball, where is it going to be, and then getting your body or hands to where you need to mark it. So I'd sort of encourage coaches to use lots of different types of balls. Small balls are really good because you've got to get your hands there. Big ones are really awesome because it's a lot easier for the kids to catch them. Soft ones allow the kids to kind of grab them and catch as they come in. They're not as hard and they don't bounce off. So all these different things allow us to change that challenge point so we can make it a little bit easier or a little bit harder for the kids depending on where they're at with their marking.
Yeah, great. I love those opportunities in there to embed that exploration concept and make it a bit more fun too, I guess. But, you're talking about watching the ball, and every single one of those variations really focused on that. So some great stuff in there. And then I guess for teachers who are a bit new to AFL, not so confident in teaching some of these skills, what would be the things you'd be looking for, again, that kids typically do wrong?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of broken fingers with those pointing up fingers. Any tips of what to look for? And
Yeah.
I think critically how we can help correct those.
Yeah, I mean, what you'll find sometimes is that sometimes kids will be scared of the ball. Like it's something coming at them. It's like, oh, this is like a little bit full on. And so if you've got something like that, so generally you can see that because the kids will turn their head away from the ball, so they won't actually watch it because they'll be a bit worried about it coming off. Things like reducing the space, so the speed at which the ball's traveling, using a different type of ball. Like if it's just a soft, squishy one, and you can kind of get quite close to them and show them, hey, if I throw this to you, it's not going to hit you at all. That allows them to kind of start going, okay, I can try and catch it, and then you can sort of progress from there. So that's the first one. Is I'd just be, if they're a little bit worried about it, like the further they are away from where the ball comes from, the more scared they're going to be of it, because it's going to be coming with a little bit of pace. And so reducing distance and reducing speed is always a really good way to make things a little bit easier. Marking, so whether it's by a chest mark or overhead mark, what you'll find is some of them will be really rigid, so they'll be really stiff, and that means the ball bounces off, or they might have really straight arms and their hands are like this, and the ball just bounces off. And so that's where the really squishy balls are really awesome for that, because they'll absorb a little bit, and then the kids can kind of scrunch them, but you don't really have hard hands. You never scrunch like that. It's kind of, and they learn to soften their hands as the ball comes in to their arms, because they'll get a bit of feedback. Like if it's bouncing off, it makes it quite hard. So they do a little bit of soft. And then also, if you've got a good thrower, that does help a little bit as well. I've got a little 1.5-year-old at the moment. We're teaching him a little bit of catching at the moment. And certainly it's on me as the thrower whether he's going to catch it or not. And so you want to give them a little bit of success. We know success builds confidence, and so whatever you can do to dial down the challenge, if that means, hey, I'm literally going to throw it into your arms, and you're going to get that feeling of what it's like to catch it. That gives us a really good starting point to then build up these other ones, these other types of skills like catching overhead, or catching from further away, or catching on the move. So there's sort of some of the key things that I've sort of noticed when we're coaching the young, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds. There's things to watch out for as well.
Yeah, and I guess most of us will be teaching, with the one teacher with our whole class of kids. So I guess there's a lesson in there about making sure we're training the kids about how to throw the ball to their partner as well.
Yeah, there's also some of the cool things you can do depending on their coordination, like even just throwing to themselves. So if you've got enough equipment within the class, just getting them to throw it up to themselves so that it's not going to go very high. Some kids will, they'll have a crack at it, but that's all right. But other ones are just throwing it up, and then you can give them some challenges like throw it up and clap and then catch. And so again, you're allowing them to explore ways that they can do that as well. And we found that, even with 5-year-olds, they're actually pretty good at it. Like you often are surprised at how good they can be and how many claps they can get, or they can spin around and do those sort of things as well. So I sort of highly recommend you can dial up the challenge again by, maybe just doing it amongst themselves or getting them to be really close when they throw.
Yeah. And that success breeds success. You could see that a couple of times with the faces on the video that, I caught it. And they feel it once, and I guess they then get the sense of how that should feel. We are going to jump into some question and answer time. So if people on the call would like to have a particular question answered, please feel free to type it into the chat. But if I could get us started, you've both talked about repetition and the need for repetition, which sounds a bit boring. How do you make sure that repetition doesn't just become the same old thing we do it 150 times and everyone's bored, and then we start having punch-ups in the line?
Well, first, Steph, I'd be keen for your thoughts on this as well. First one is no lines. Like that's sort of the big one for me. The more, if you can get at least one football or one ball, it doesn't have to be a football. It can be lots of different types of balls, but certainly one between two, and they're able to work in pairs around this and share. Part of the teaching is teaching them to share the ball as well, and they all have turns. You reduce in a session, if there's one ball between two, you're going to get lots of repetitions because there are, the more balls there are per child, the more repetitions they're going to get. So that kind of ticks a couple of boxes, and then you're not worried about lines or kids misbehaving at the back of lines or, pulling each other's hair or doing anything like that. And then on top of that, my other note on that is that repetition without repetition. So providing variety within, just because they catch it, that's where we use, catch and clap, and then, throw the ball up, clap, catch it. That's one rep of catching the ball, but there's a bit of variety in it, which keeps it really fresh for the kids, and they love the different challenges that they get set. So being able to change things up, use different types of balls, use different equipment, all of that still provides repetition, but it doesn't look the same, so it's not as boring.
Yeah, and I can hear a lot of the change it words in there too, ways that you can stop it being boring. Steph, anything to add from you?
Yeah, no, Sam's nailed that on the head, hasn't he? I think from my point of view as well, competition and challenge, kids love it. I know we're talking to sort of 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds at the moment, but, even if it's as simple as, okay, who can get to, if we're talking about handball or whatever the skill is, who can get to 10 first? As long as you're setting up a safe environment where, you've done this with the kids before, and you pair them up so who's sort of a little bit more responsible perhaps, but challenges go a long way. Not bribery as such, but maybe little rewards. It might be as simple as, you get to have a minute to go and explore and play with the ball by yourself and come up with something different at the end and show us your own skills, little things like that. So, little races and challenges and things like that usually get the kids pretty motivated. But like Sam said, just mixing it up. If it is a change of equipment, kids seem to be quite stimulated by that. And just sort of the environment, sometimes you do things in the same spot on the oval or the same spot on the court, mix it up, go to different areas, and your environment's forever changing. So I think that's important as well.
And that would certainly help with that adaptability that Sam talked about earlier.
Yeah, and to build on Steph's point, look, the competition one is always a really, really cool element because you can frame the competition about competing with themselves as well. So how many did you get last time? oh, okay, well, you could throw it up, I use the marking example. You throw it up and you did 2 claps last time. Well, let's see if you can get to 3. And that's the competition for them as well. And so you can use competition, between, but then you can also do it within. Kids love that because they want to see that, just like anyone, they want to see that they're getting better and that they feel like they're achieving. And so you providing the opportunity for them to show that. The number of kids that when you run the session, they come running over to you, said, I managed to do this and I never used to do it before. That's the really cool stuff. And certainly as a coach is the really enjoyable part of it as well.
Yeah, fantastic. So one of our people on the line have asked what order would you teach the AFL skills? And, we've started with picking up the ball and with marking at the sort of beginning end. Is that where you guys would start? And then what would you progress to next?
Good question. Personally, I think, and there'd be some evidence around this, ball handling, fundamental movement skills are crucial, obviously, for any sport, whether it's you crawl before you walk before you run. So whilst, there's specific skills, you need to get some of those things nailed first. However, I would definitely start with ball handling, whether it's just literally getting used to having something in your hand, like Sam mentioned before, varying equipment, different situations. And I usually progress to handballing. I find that they always want to kick for some reason, and kicking is a lot of fun, but if you need to be able to handball, and again, that comes to having a lot of touch. Handballing first, I'd slowly get into kicking, because at the end of the day, if you can't do those 2 basic things, it's really hard to actually enjoy playing some sort of game, even if it is modified games. Anything to do with ball in hand is very, very important early days. And then I obviously progress into everything else. Marking obviously is essential, but you're getting that touch anyway when you're doing your handballing drills. That's how I would do it. And that's sort of how I would set up units. I haven't taught primary school in a very long time. So Sam, you're the expert here, but that's how my brain would work with that.
Yeah. And I think it's a really good call out. I would sort of, I probably don't lean one way or the other. I think ball handling, as Steph said, is the most important thing. And the more that you can manipulate a ball, the better you're going to be. You're just used to understanding how it moves in your hand, and even just an oval, like a football, the oval shape, like understanding how it moves. Certainly, I know there's a bit of the science around like kids when they play games, like certainly when they're quite young, like the age group we're talking about, like they're not going to pass the ball a lot when they get into an actual game situation. Like their brain is still developing. They're quite egocentric. Like it's a cognitive thing. So the amount of time I've spent with young coaches who are tearing their hair out because they're playing the game and no kid's passing the ball, like whether by kick or by hand, they just get the ball. It's like my turn. I'm going to run and go. So I think it's really important to teach the skills and we keep focusing on it, but also not really expecting them to be necessarily able to apply it in a game until they get a bit older and they kind of understand the concept of passing and what that means in the game setting. So I would sort of roll through all of them and make sure that they're really enjoying all the different skills, knowing that at some point it will click in terms of with the game. But just, I think, as Steph pointed out, like it's just really important to learn the fundamental bits of the game and having the opportunity to explore them. So handballing, figuring out how to do big, long handballs or handball along the ground, all the kind of fun things you see at the elite game now. They do all these crazy handballs over your shoulder. So, why not let the kids have a crack at it? And then, kicking as well. So I wouldn't worry too much around the order, but getting really good with the ball in hand and knowing how to manipulate it, whether it's a soft, squishy one or an actual footy, that's really important. The more they can do that, the better they'll be as they get older in terms of doing all the other things we layer on top.
Yeah, fabulous. Great advice. So one of our participants has asked about gamification, and I guess we've got this balance that we're trying to find between giving some really clear, explicit instruction and guidance and then having fun and playing games. How do you kind of merge those two together? So I suppose there's engagement and fun, but also that the kids are getting the right skills they need. How do you strike that balance?
It's a good question.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It is a good one. I think you hear a lot about, if we're talking games and rules and scores and things like that, you hear a lot about the junior footy where they're not, keeping score and things like that. So I think it's important at junior levels to start developing the knowledge on the rules and and the expectations. In terms of how do you implement it, I think it just comes down to the basics of football. So there's some non-negotiable rules that you could start to teach the kids at the start, but it has to be engaging. So I mean, you can always paint things up to be competitive without it actually being a game. So for example, linking a simple handballing one back and forth to certain players, or in the AFL, AFLW, this is Patrick Dangerfield handballing it to Joel Selwood. So they're going back and forth. Okay, cool. They've done that 3 times. Great. If they were to kick it through the big sticks, how many points would that be? And then you can sort of talk about the point system. So there's lots of different ways you can sort of include game and competition without actually playing games. I hope that sort of answers the questions. I know what I'm thinking in my head. It's just it's hard to explain. And then just linking it to the game of AFL. You know that a goal is 6 points. So you can say that if you do 10 handballs, you've kicked 6 points, and then make that a game. But yeah, Sam's probably better equipped to answer this question than I am.
No, I wouldn't know about that. So certainly, like, the more we can make things games and activities game-like. So game-like doesn't mean it doesn't have to mirror exactly the game, but certainly it can be. We can bring elements of games into it. So we're doing some handball activity where we can put little goals down and you can handball through them. And certainly the younger we are, it's harder to add more and more structure to it, because the kids are just going to go outside it anyway, and so you're trying to get them to explore. So it might be, we got like 12 balls out there. You got to get a ball. You got to try and handball it through a goal. If someone does that, you go run and grab another one. And, that's why we play games like Rob the Nest and games like that are all in our junior curriculums, are because they are really fun for the kids. But that's just a game format which allows us to then apply the skills of the game, and then we can layer in. And I really like Steph's point around, we know kicking a goal is 6 points. So why don't you add, if you do this thing, it's worth 6 points. You do this, it's worth 1. You can bring elements of the rules of the game into it as well, of the big game. But while we're able to do a little bit of skill work in a game sort of format, because it's more fun, really. It's more fun than just kind of standing there. But that's where the challenge point, and as a coach, that's really important for you to figure out where the challenge point is for your kids. And certainly the younger they are, the more individual focused you'll probably be, because cognitively they still struggle around, playing a team game. It's very hard. So you can have, with younger ones, more footballs and things like that, but you can put little rules in place, which they'll love.
Great. So many.
It is.
Sorry,
Kim. I was just going to. It is challenging, because anytime you are going into some sort of game or modified game, that the skill sort of goes out the window. So I just it's really important to reinforce, we have to get this one right, so then we can play a game. That always goes a long way, because then students become frustrated, disengaged, and then your fundamentals and your technique goes out the window. So I think the end point is to have modified games, absolutely. And you're always going to have your superstars and the ones that struggle, but you need to find that middle game.
Yeah, and be prepared that it's going to be chaos. Like, I think that's as a mindset. If we know we're going in with the young, like especially the young ones, like as the 5, 6, 7, it's going to be pretty chaotic, and that's okay. And that it probably should look a bit chaotic, because we're trying to allow them to explore. They're exploring these skills. They're exploring how they do things. They're not going to get it right all the time. And so we want to ensure that there's a little bit of chaos. And as long as it's kind of organized chaos, like what's going on. And as a coach or as a teacher, well, what am I looking for? So we talked about, for the points, you've got those points that were shown on the videos, and they're the things. Am I seeing the kids trying to do that? Like, great. And so even if that means there's 15 footies, just going everywhere, but am I seeing the kids looking through their hands? Am I seeing them, watching the ball and following it? If I'm seeing all of that, then that's a massive tick for us in terms of as teachers and coaches. So being really comfortable that it could look pretty crazy, but because I know what I'm drilling as the teacher or coach my attention to, I'm seeing all of those things that are the teaching points, then we're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah. And of course, so many of these comments and suggestions are embedded in the resources that we have available for teachers, lots of game ideas. And I think what you were touching on there, Sam, what are we looking for? What does success look like? How can we measure that? How can we sort of move on from there? I'm watching the time, but I just have one more fun question if we can squeeze it in. And that's in your experience of working with kids, especially talking about younger kids today, what do you think they love the most about learning and playing AFL?
Oh, geez, good question. I personally think they just love when they get to imitate their favourite player. And if they're not into football, then obviously you can give them some options. But I still remember I used to run around being Steve Kernahan, who played for Carlton. That's how old I am. So I think just now watching kids imitate their favourite player and you see the Dusty Martin haircuts, things like that. They want to be these people. So just that freedom to be who they want and bring their own flair. And that's something you can tap into that as well. You can ask, okay, who's your favourite player? Great. What makes them so good? And show me what they do. That's getting them to explore and think pretty critically about what they're doing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, they love being able to do things that they've seen people do on TV, whether it's on TV or even sometimes older kids, they see kids around the playground or they've got older siblings that they've seen do things. And then I think they also love just the opportunity to try new things and then maybe do some things they've never done before, and seeing again for them, like seeing themselves develop and seeing themselves do things. And as a teacher coach, you create that environment which is encouraging to do that and supportive of them, then they'll love it. Then you're sort of, no matter what, it doesn't really matter what their ability is, they'll love it because they'll feel as though they're getting better and that they're supported. And so I think that's what the kids love. And certainly when I've coached the younger ones, they're the ones that make you feel really good as a coach, because they're the ones who, like I talked about earlier, they come running over to you, telling you about how awesome it was. And so their whole face lights up, and they're about this high, so they're tiny, and then they're running around going, how good is this? I bounced the ball and it came back to me, like that sort of stuff is pretty cool.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, it's been a pleasure chatting with both of you, and we just have one more little component of the program just to have a quick look at before we wrap up, and I will thank you both in just a second. But for now, thanks very much for those generous thoughts and answers. So as well as the on-field learning, one of the bonuses is that teachers can also access learning in the classroom with the off-field module that's part of the package. And there's a particular focus in these lessons on leadership skills. And this is going to be a highlight of my afternoon watching this video again. It's a fabulous little video that you can use with your class and features our Steph. Let's have a quick look.
Hi boys, how you going?
Hi, Steph Chiocci.
Hi Mitchell, hi Maddox, nice to meet you both. I'm very excited to talk to you about leadership today.
Steph, are you a leader?
I think I am a leader, Mitchell. I am a leader at the Collingwood Football Club, and I'm also a teacher, so I think I need to be a leader at school too.
Steph, what do you like about being a leader?
I like the fact that I can build relationships with people as a leader, and that we get to work together to achieve a goal. Do you think kids can be leaders, Maddox?
Yeah.
How are they leaders?
Like by picking up rubbish, doing homework, helping other people, being responsible, respectful.
I think some fantastic words. Responsible and respectful are great words.
What about helping others? Is that leadership?
It is leadership. When you help others, I think you feel good about yourself, but you're also making them better, aren't you?
Steph, what about if you make a mistake? What should you do?
That's a very good question, Maddox, because leaders aren't perfect. Nobody's perfect, are they? I think if you make a mistake, it's really important that you own your mistake and you're really honest about it and you can talk it through with people, and then you push on and you focus on the next task.
Steph, were you a leader when you were at school?
I was a leader when I was at school. Not in primary school, I didn't have an official title, but when I was in high school, I was the college vice sports captain, which was really cool because I love sports. And I was also captain of some sporting teams, which was really fun. Now, you boys know a lot about football. So do you play football at school at all?
Yeah.
Excellent. So what happens if there's an argument when you're playing in the yard?
I sort of like getting to fight, but I just keep hold of it.
What about you, Mitchell?
I'm not too sure. Steph, what's one piece of advice you have for kids if they want to be a leader?
It's a fantastic question, Maddox, and I think you touched on it before. I think you need to be respectful. Respectful of adults, respectful of your peers and your friends, and respectful of the environment that you're in.
Such a great little video. So for Foundation to Year 2 students, the in-class module includes understanding the basics of what a leader is and how they can demonstrate leadership in their everyday activities, like picking up rubbish. The lesson is 40 minutes or so and includes relevant vocabulary, learning outcomes, and student success criteria. The lesson moves from a discussion to a creative task, a reflection activity, and ends with some suggestions to extend the learning. And lastly, we'd like to draw your attention to one more program that's been developed to work alongside the on and off field modules. Healthy Kicks is a program that's been developed with Coles and focuses on the benefits of healthy eating and nutrition. It's a 5-week program for Foundation to Year 6 that explores the 5 food groups, the importance of fueling the body before and after exercise, meal planning, food and culture, and how to get creative in the kitchen. And because we know a lot of this plays out at home, there's also a set of at-home learning activities that you can send home with the students or email them to their parents to get them involved. For those interested in reading more about the play-based learning that we spoke about earlier, we recommend you have a little look at this piece of literature. You might just want to jot down that source there if you can. But that brings us to the end of our session today. A huge thank you to all of the teachers from across the country who've joined us here today, and we hope that you've got some useful takeaways from the session and you're feeling ready to teach AFL with your students. All the resources that we've discussed today can be found at the website that's on the screen, and we'd encourage you to make sure you go and have a look. Now, if you teach more than one year group, or if you're interested in learning some of the other AFL skills, please join us for the next sessions. The next one on Tuesday, the 15th of November, same time as this one, where our experts will cover bouncing and handballing. And then the following Tuesday, the 22nd, we'll look at kicking, and we'll get into that in quite some detail. And of course, we must thank our guests, Steph, Sam, and Rebecca. What a wealth of knowledge and experience you bring. We've been really fortunate to have you join us today. Feedback on this session is welcome, and we'll be sending out a survey to get your thoughts and opinions. It'll only take a few minutes of your time, but it will help us to improve our offerings to teachers in the future. And that brings us to the end of our webinar. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks, everyone.